A few days ago, we received the bombshell news that Pokémon GO is looking to get sold to another game developer, and the number one buyer is supposedly Scopely Inc. But let's say that Scopely does not end up buying Pokémon GO. What other game developer could take over the reins? That's what I wanted to explore in today's video, and I really do think this is going to be an interesting discussion. Alright, how's it going everyone? Count Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon GO video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. Alright, so this is a continuation of the discussion that we've been having all week, where Pokemon GO is looking to be sold to another game studio. This is something that was broken recently from Bloomberg, and I do think that it is going to happen, but I'm really not sure if it's going to be Scopely Inc. that's going to end up buying the entirety of Niantic's game division. I think there's a lot of really great game studios out there that could definitely fork over the bill and get every single one of Niantic's games, and I do think one of these game studios could do a really great job at making Pokemon GO such a phenomenal game that we all want it to be. But there's also some game studios that would be a detriment to Pokemon GO. I think Scopely Inc. is cited as one of those game studios. Unfortunately, they are the number one buyer right now, according to the sources behind that news that broke. And I am very concerned about Scopely Inc., although I am also cautiously optimistic because, like I said in a previous video, I do think that when it comes to Scopely, they at least will be developing Pokemon GO as a game rather than just as a tech demo, which is kind of how Niantic has been treating it. So yeah, aside from that, I do think there's a lot of interesting discussions we could have regarding what other game studio could take over Pokemon GO and whether or not they would actually do a really good job. First of all, let's go over the wishlist items because these are some game studios which I believe would do a phenomenal job with Pokemon GO, but unfortunately I do not think they're large enough to actually be able to fork over the $3.5 billion price tag for all of Niantic's games. But if they were to ever get Pokemon GO, I do think they would do a phenomenal job. And the first of these is going to be Dina. The reason why I say Dina is because, well, right now they have a whole bunch of Pokemon titles under their belt, and they're doing a really good job with these two particular Pokemon titles. I'm talking about TCG Pocket and as well as Pokemon Masters EX. Both of these games are incredibly fun. They're incredibly polished, they have a very unique art style, and I think when it comes to the Pokemon IP, they're doing a lot to push that Pokemon franchise forward. And I think it would be to the great benefit of Pokemon GO if they were to take over Pokemon GO as one of their games. Considering the amount of really good work that they're putting into TCG Pocket as well as Pokemon Masters EX, I do think they would treat Pokemon GO with a lot of care. They obviously have a lot of passion towards the Pokemon IP, and I do think that for everything that we want within Pokemon GO, they would definitely deliver. At the very least, some of the gameplay mechanics would definitely go even further. And then another wishlist company is going to be a game studio which I believe would not necessarily ever take on Pokemon GO because it just does not fit with their own brand, but I do think they are very great game developers, and that is going to be Riot Games. Riot Games is definitely big enough to afford the $3.5 billion price tag, although I just feel like when it comes to Riot Games, they tend to go a lot more inside baseball with their games. A lot of their games are involving the League of Legends IP, as well as with Valorant, and I do not necessarily think that Pokemon would fit in with that, especially because when it comes to League of Legends, it's such a very unique franchise, but I think it would be really cool. Like, if Riot Games were to take over Pokemon GO, I think they could do a lot of really cool stuff. And who knows, maybe there could be a lot of fun crossovers where you could have a Pikachu dressed up as Jinx, or I don't know, that would be some very interesting costumes that they could do. But aside from that, yeah, I think they're definitely talented enough to take on a game like Pokemon GO, but I do not think it's ever going to happen. I really would like that, but I just don't see it as a possibility. But what are other game studios that could potentially take over Pokemon GO? I think one is pretty obvious, and that is, of course, Microsoft Games. Yeah, there has been a big history between Microsoft and Nintendo that we really cannot ignore. There's been a lot of back and forth when it came to the Xbox versus the Nintendo Switch as well as the Wii. But I do think that if they were to take that rivalry aside, I think this would be greatly beneficial, not just for Pokemon GO, but also for Microsoft themselves. It would definitely allow them to branch out, and it would be a way for them to get into the Japanese market. So in my opinion, I think from a marketing point of view, it would definitely make sense. And in terms of all the resources behind all the different things that Microsoft does, I think it would be really great. It would definitely make Pokemon Go a lot better. There'd be a lot more tech support. There'd be a lot of really great game developers and game designers doing a lot of stuff with Pokemon Go. I think it would be really great for the game, and maybe that is a possibility if Scopely Inc. does not take it over. Another thing regarding Microsoft games, there's a lot of different franchises and different studios under their umbrella, and one of those studios could take over Pokemon Go, like, for example, King Games, I think it is, whoever it is that develops Candy Crush. And then there's, of course, Blizzard Entertainment, as well as Activision. A lot of these game studios, yeah, they might have a pretty bad reputation among the players who play their games, but I will say that there is a lot of talent behind some of these studios, and if they were to take over Pokemon Go, I think they could do a lot of really good things with them. But yeah, that's one of the things that should be mentioned. The Microsoft umbrella is pretty vast, so there's definitely a lot of different game studios that could take it over. Now, another obvious one, I think this is probably the most obvious one, but Nintendo themselves. I think Nintendo could do a really great job with Pokemon Go. Maybe they could give it to a game studio like Dina. Like, if they were to purchase the entirety of Niantic's game division, then they could take a lot of those games and a lot of the talent behind those games and actually allocate them to one of their studios. Like, if Scopely Inc. does not end up taking over Niantic's game division, then there is a strong possibility that Nintendo themselves will just take it from them. And then they could take a lot of those games and just bring them to a lot of different studios that are under Nintendo. I think that's definitely a very strong possibility. I think that's something that Niantic should hope for. I think that would be great for Pokemon Go players. It would definitely bring Pokemon Go kind of back home to where it belongs. So yeah, I do not know how the intricacies of that would work. Nintendo, of course, is more of a publisher. They're not game developers themselves, but there's a lot of studios that work on Nintendo products, of course. So I do think this is going to be one of those cases where if Nintendo forks over the bill and purchases the entirety of Niantic's game division, then they could take a lot of those games and then give them to other studios. That's the way I would foresee it, but we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening. But as of right now, Scopely Inc. is the studio that is going to take over Niantic's game division. At least that's what the rumor mill is suggesting. So we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening. I've been talking to a lot of my friends who have been playing games like Marvel Strike Force for the past several years, and they would tell you that it's not a good thing. Scopely Inc. is notorious for just cramming their games with monetization, as well as just they're not really that skilled in terms of game developers. I think it's just going to be one bad thing for another. That's at least the word that I'm getting, especially from people who have played both Scopely games as well as Niantic games. They just feel like Scopely is just going to be yet another Niantic. I really do not know if that's truly the case. I haven't actually personally played any of the Scopely games. I'm just going off word of mouth, and it just seems like when you think about the hearsay behind everything that's going on, it just seems like the doomsayers and the negative comments are always going to be louder than those who are very positive about this sale. So I really do not know what it's going to end up being, but at the very least, I really hope that Pokemon Go ends up in good hands. I think there's plenty of different great options out there for who Niantic could sell the games to. And if they are planning to sell their games, I really hope it ends up being someone who's going to give Pokemon Go the amount of care that it deserves. But in any case, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Is there a particular game developer that you would like to see take over Pokemon Go? I think there's a lot of really great options out there that I did not mention. So if there is one that you would think would be a much great fit for this game, definitely share it in the comments and let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it to be insightful. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. Real quick, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the absolute best way you could do that is always going to be by joining my Patreon. And if you become a paid Patreon member, I'm going to add you to my Pokemon Go friends list. So that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system, if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you're always welcome to do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all next time.